Today, I'm going to do a simple guide as to how you can track ultimates in game. Ult tracking is super important to figure out how to shut down the enemy's win conditions, and it's one of those skills that you'll develop over time. You'll never fully know whether or not the enemy has an ultimate, but it's one of those things you'll kind of get a sense for the longer that you play. And to make it a bit easier, I've written out a list of some things that I keep in mind whenever I'm trying to track ultimates from the enemy team. First, to start, some ults charge faster than others, so target people who get them quickly at the start. An example of this would be Cloak and Dagger and Luna. Cloak and Dagger charges her ult a lot quicker than Luna does, so if you were to target a support early in the fight, it should probably be the Cloak and Dagger because of the fact that you would want to shut down that ultimate before she gets it. And if you're able to successfully shut down the Cloak and Dagger, that means the Luna would be much easier pickings afterwards. Because if the Cloak and Dagger gets her ultimate, she could buy enough time for Luna to get hers, and so on and so forth. Another thing to watch out for would be to watch for the mirror matchups. Currently in this season, Cloak and Dagger is a very common pick, so if you see a Cloak and Dagger on both teams, that means at the moment that your Cloak and Dagger is getting close to her ultimate, that means the enemy Cloak and Dagger is close to their ultimate as well. And a lot of times they tend to use ults at around the same time, so it becomes very easy to track as the game goes on because you know that anytime you get your ult, they're about to have theirs as well. The same could be true for DPS or tanks as well. If both teams are running mag, then both mags are probably going to get their ults at around the same time. The ult charge times may vary, but around a minute to a minute and a half mark will be when most people get them. Some supports can charge in 45 seconds if there's a lot of damage being output to heal, and there's certain exceptions like Moon Knight who could charge his ult in less time under the right conditions. Ults do take time to build up, especially for DPS and tank players, so you generally know that if you've seen them ult, it means that there's going to be about a minute worth of fighting before they get their next one. Now, when it comes to some supports steal ult charge like Jeff and Rocket. Jeff and Rocket heal groups much faster and much better than other supports, so they can typically charge their ults much quicker than some of the other supports. This also means they're going to steal the ult charge from other supports at times. Rocket's AoE heals tend to steal more healing ult charge from characters like Luna. After Invis got buffed, she tends to steal more heals from Rocket now, and even though Rocket's got really great ult charge, Jeff steals from Rocket as well due to his ability to easily heal his allies and damage enemies at the same time. So knowing this, even if both teams are running Cloak and Dagger but the enemy team has a Rocket, if you're playing Cloak and Dagger, you might get your ult faster than the enemy Cloak and Dagger does just due to the fact that the enemy team has a Jeff. This means you might be able to pop your Cloak and Dagger ult first before they ever have a chance to counterattack with their own. Next, if you or an ally ult at the same time as an enemy, then you sync up your ult charge. So that means by the next time around, if you are close to your ult, that means that the enemy who popped theirs around the same time is close to their ult as well. This is easiest in mirror matchups, but some heroes still do charge at about the same rate. So you can know that if they didn't use it in the previous fight, they're probably going to use it in the next one. Ultimates are win conditions. Figuring out who has the ult and pre-shutting them down will help you secure fights even when you're down in the ult economy. And a good final general rule is if you haven't seen them ult in a bit, they probably have it. Now, when it comes to tracking ultimates in the game, it's good to communicate with your team in between fights. There's always downtime when the enemy team or your team is regrouping, and you need to come up with a plan before engaging one another. During this downtime, if you're not sure, ask your teammates who ulted last fight, and by process of elimination, you can figure out who's going to ult next. Because while getting kills and final hits is great, if you know the enemy team has a Hela and a Star-Lord and Hela already used her ult, there's no point in trying to target the Hela when the Star-Lord is their win condition. So getting a kill on Hela in that moment doesn't mean nearly as much as getting a kill on the Star-Lord. Good players don't just get final hits, they get final hits on the most high priority targets. That all being said, I have a game that I'm going to use as an example in which I have covered up the enemy ultimates on my screen. I'll show you a picture of my monitor here as it looks a bit silly, but you'll still be able to see the ultimates. And I'll pause throughout the way and explain my thought process as I try to track the enemy ultimates without seeing them. In this game, I'll be playing Magneto while my buddy Brandon is on Groot.
Good.
This looks like a gig for the Guardians of the Galaxy.
So right off the bat, I can immediately notice that there's a few different mirror matchups here. There is a Meg on both teams as well as a Spidey on both teams. This will make it easy to figure out that if I'm close to my ultimate, then their Meg is close to theirs. And I can look and I can see that because of the fact that I have a Jeff and a Rocket, despite the fact that, like I said before, Rocket charges his ult really quick, Jeff tends to steal ult charge from his other supports. Now, if I look at the enemy team, Cloak and Dagger and Loki charge at about the same rate, so as to who will get the support ult first on the enemy team is all dependent based on the skill of the player.
Of me I meet is nicer.
Hostiles up front.
As the enemy team is coming up, I can look at the ult charge on my team and I can get a general idea as the ult charge on the enemy team. We won the first fight, so that usually means that we dished out more damage, and Groot's ult charges faster than most other tanks, so he's close to his. I'm a little over halfway from mine, and that might be about similar for the mag as well. My Jeff is getting close to his ult, and I'm guessing because the enemy team is taking a lot of damage, that means their supports are getting up there, and they'll be around the 70 to 80% as well. Our Punisher is outputting a lot of damage, so he's getting close to his ult, and I imagine that since Phoenix dishes out a lot of damage as well, she'd probably be the next closest one. Since my Spidey's sitting at about 46%, I don't think he's that far ahead from the enemy Spidey. And Venom is getting up there, but I don't think he has it quite yet, as he doesn't charge his ult quite as fast as Groot. And there we go. As Jeff gets his ult, we see an enemy support ult come out. And since I'm on Magneto, I saved my friendly bubble waiting for him to cast his ult. Rocket now has his ult, so I'm assuming Loki either has his already or it's pretty close to having it. And since I'm sitting at 87% on my ult, their Magneto is probably pretty close to having it as well, if he doesn't already. And since we've been winning and our Spidey's only at 60%, I don't think their Spidey's close to ult yet either.
Your powers are mine! Us against...
My power cannot be quelled.
Now that that fight has ended, both supports on both teams have used their ultimates. Rocket used his at the same time as Loki, Jeff used his at the same time as Cloak and Dagger, Punisher used his at the same time as Magneto, which means that going into the next fight, we haven't seen ultimates from Venom, Phoenix, or Spider-Man. So those are going to be the ones that we're going to have to look out for.
Idiots! Turn around! I'll patch you up.
I feel like myself again.
Knowing that Venom has ult, I turn around and once I see him on my supports, I know he's going to be looking for a moment to try and use his ult on them. So I'm trying to be aware of that and being prepared to help my team out if they need me.
You need not.
I had left the team to go anchor down the point to make sure that the enemy team couldn't cap it. And once I did that, I heard the Spider-Man on our team ult, which means that the enemy team Spidey is either close to his ult or he's got it already. And now that we've seen the Venom ult, we know that the enemy Spidey and the Phoenix are the only two that haven't ulted yet. I can also see that our Jeff is close to his ultimate, which means that the enemy Cloak and Dagger is probably close to hers as well.
Man, I gotta make another beacon.
You'll have to keep fighting against the fire.
Ah, much better. You need not fear.
Bogey's incoming. Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man! Spider-Man gone? Hey, Teeny! Enjoy this
You
mark!
are under my protection.
I am Groot.
As the first round comes to an end, we use both Mag ult and Jeff ult at the exact same time that the Cloak and Dagger used her ult. So now our ults will sync up yet again. We know that the enemy Spider-Man had used his ult at the end as well, so we know that he's close to 0. Meg hasn't ulted since his first one, so either has it already or he's pretty darn close. Venom as well has used his ult at the start of the previous fight, so odds are he's probably sitting around 50%-ish. And normally I wouldn't see this until later, but they did switch off of Loki and onto Rocket, which means that they cut his ult charge in half. So even though he was next up on his ult, he felt that giving up that ult charge to switch to Rocket was a better choice in this scenario. And we still haven't seen the Phoenix ult yet. We finally see Phoenix use her ult, so now we know we don't have to worry about it. Jeff is once again getting close to his ultimate, so that means the Cloak and Dagger might be getting close to hers as well. Both rockets will get theirs at about the same time, but I think the enemy rocket might have an advantage over ours. Meg still has his ult, and he might be holding it for the Punisher at this point. Our Spidey had used his ult first in the previous round, so that means that he's going to be to his ult before the enemy Spider-Man is at his. The Venom might be close, but because he died, I think he's still not quite at his ultimate just yet. If I had to bet, maybe 70 to 80%. So this next fight is probably going to be decided by the support ultimates and maybe the Mag.
I feel like myself again.
I'll patch you up. This is real firepower! Hey, Teeny, enjoy the air!
Both rockets use their ult at about the same time, so they'll get those charged up at about the same time as well. Same thing can be said for Jeff and Cloak and Dagger, and once those supports get close to their next ultimate, Venom will be right behind them. Our Spidey also has his ultimate now, which means that the enemy Spidey either has it or he's coming up on it pretty close.
Their team's capture progress has passed the halfway point.
We need help.
Not at Nick. He gets things done.
I purge the darkness.
This is the downtime in between the fights now, and now we can take a second to think as to what ultimates the enemy team has. Both support ults were used, so we know that they're not close to those. The enemy team used their Magneto ult at the end of that fight, and the Venom used it at the start, so the Venom will be closer to his ultimate, but still probably not anywhere close because it just happened in the last fight. So the only two ultimates we really need to keep a lookout for are the Phoenix and the Spider-Man. I was a little off on my guess about Venom. Venom managed to charge his ult much quicker than I expected, but I was still correct in knowing that the enemy Spider-Man had his ult. And now if we look at our Spider-Man, who's about halfway to his ultimate, by the time our Spider-Man charges his ultimate the rest of the way to 100, that means the enemy Spider-Man is probably going to be around 50%. Going into this next fight, we know that Phoenix probably has her ultimate, and both supports on both teams are getting close to theirs. I have my ultimate, and because I switched to Strange first, I don't think that Strange has his yet either.
Good medicine. I purge the darkness.
Phoenix is dead, and now we have both of our support ultimates ready. This would be a good time to rocket ult, but I'm prepared for the enemy rocket to ult at the same time.
This is real firepower!
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
That's right. Everything is mine.
Spider mode.
We managed to get the win, and even though Jeff was able to use his ultimate, I'm assuming that Cloak and Dagger must have been around the 90% range for her not to be using her ultimate right at the end there. You'll never be 100% right when you're trying to guess the enemy ultimates, but the goal is just to get you as prepped as much as possible. Sometimes as well, the enemy has tells. Like when Strange goes up in the air, you're assuming he's about to ult your team. Or if Psylocke tries to dash up in the air and drop down on top of your backline. Or if a Groot starts walking up really aggressively and really confidently. I hope this video was helpful in teaching you sort of the things that we all look out for when it comes to ultimate tracking. And now comes the fun part where I get to go to the editing process and see how close I was. Anyway, if there's any other tricks that you use to ult track, let me know down in the comments below. And I hope you found this helpful, and thank you for watching.